So you see, the Bible, as in our lives sometimes, seems to be really ready for Christmas to be over. It's time to get down to business. John said, I baptize you with water, but one who is more powerful than I is coming. I am not worthy to untie the thong of his sandal. Here in chapter 3, we find John the Baptist essentially marking the beginning of Jesus' ministry. The holidays are over. No more wise men, no more shepherds, no more angels bending near the earth to touch their hearts of gold, no cute little baby, right? The mystery has been put away for some people for a year. I like to think for most of us, Easter, Lent. Or at least that's how it can feel at first. At first. You know that tendency in December to put things off a little bit? You can just nod if you know what I'm talking about. We come up with an issue or a problem to solve, let's say like December 10th, right? And we say to ourselves, you know, let's put that off till the new year. Let's wait until we can fully focus our attention on the thorny problem at hand. Now this week, I spent a good period of time, Facebook friends, you already know this, in doctors' waiting rooms. And some of those visits were a surprise, unplanned. But others were of that wait until after the holidays sort. You see, Connor had his braces put on this past Thursday. Be a good example. And we waited until after he and his brother Eamon and I could represent the church at the town Epiphany concert and fundraiser for the Natick Service Council that was Sunday afternoon. And Connor, as you may recall, plays the trumpet, which requires a bit of relearning once you have something attached to your teeth. So we elected to postpone the big event until this week. Now, of course, this required a certain amount of waiting for me, too. For while he was having his braces put on, I was meant to sit in the front room of the orthodontist for about 2 hours, surrounded by cooking and real estate magazines, listening to the sort of waiting room music that is supposed to be relaxing, but never really is. It's mostly 80s classic hits, to be honest. And to think, while I was sitting there, of all the things that I have to do to get our winter ministry at the church up to speed. But of course, that was the problem, wasn't it? I was thinking of all the things that I have to do. So, to be honest, I couldn't actually sit there for 2 hours. I physically could not. So instead, I found myself pacing back and forth outside in the parking lot with at least 2 other parents, all of us on the phone, calling back and forth to whatever office they happened to be calling that day. I was calling Felicia and Stephen because Thursday morning is when we get both the church newsletter and our orders of service together. You see, the problem with putting things off until after the holidays is that we don't really have extra time after the holidays. Our normal lives are actually just as busy as we were in Advent. And here at the church, we have a few of these pressing post-holiday tasks too. Bill can tell you about them. Perhaps most notably, we have that church directory, right? We have to get our pictures in. And there is the annual meeting coming up, and the reports due Friday, I believe. And in our lives in general, we have similar situations. In our families and at work and in the various community groups we work with or belong to, there are budgets and reports to be made and written on deadline now. There are tests to study for. There are meetings to go to. And all the while, though no doubt we do our best to shift as much of the blame as we can, no, we still realize that we really probably shouldn't have thought of the holiday season as being quite so clear of mundane responsibilities. The hardest part for me in January is the waiting and the overlapping tasks. The way the stream of activity seems to go on even while we are sitting around, waiting for someone else to do something, waiting for the chance or the opportunity to do our thing, waiting for what comes next. And there is always something that comes next. It's a very different sort of waiting than what we talk about in Advent, isn't it? In Advent, we're looking forward to something, an actual date and time. We are looking forward to a time of parties, and if not less stress, at least different stress. We're looking forward to the decorations, and the special lights, and the candles, and the tree in the living room. Those are all gone now, except the wreaths. And when we are all done with all of that, we might even look forward to normal life just a little bit. But it's amazing at how quickly the joy of returning to normal life can wear thin. Now we are in the thick of what may not seem all that unique or mysterious or special anymore, with Easter and spring so far away. Now the challenge, of course, is to find ways to see the spirit that was so obvious just a few weeks ago, but to find it in January, in the winter, on cold, wet, cloudy days. The challenge is to find the gift that is left for us without its bow or its wrapping paper, without the stocking hung by the chimney with care, but is instead located somewhere in the back of the car on our suburban commute, or on our parental bus route, or in the parking lot on the cell phone. The deadlines that we have set for ourselves loom larger than we thought they would, and we must make sure that they don't control us any more than they have to. So what do we do? What do we do if we get trapped in that situation, an endless cycle of tasks, of asking what is coming next? How do we get out? Perhaps not surprisingly, my first thought has to do with church. Has to do with our own spiritual discipline and study. It sounds serious when we put it this way, but it doesn't really have to be. Because the key, once you strip away the differing languages of various traditions, always comes down to a certain quality or a state of mind. On our little board today it says intention. It's a term that Matt used. But sometimes it's called mindfulness. The Buddhist Thich Nhat Hanh once wrote that mindfulness is the miracle which can call back our dispersed mind and restore it to wholeness so we can live each minute of life. And in our responsive reading, Thoreau talks about living deliberately. And sometimes it's called the spirit of prayer. Paul's letter to the Thessalonians tells them, and presumably us, to pray without ceasing. Today, in our reading from Waldemar Argow, he uses the term appreciation. All around us, everywhere, is a world bursting with the beauty of sight, sound, odor, and sensory feeling, he writes. Yet because we fail to make a more conscious effort at enjoyment and appreciation, we go our insensate ways like all the rest of those 20th century machines. I'm not sure that the 21st century machines are all that different. Appreciation of where we are right now, by whatever name you call it, is both a necessary element for our happiness and something that is viewed as a little bit suspect by our culture. This suspicion is a product of always asking what comes next. We are, after all, supposed to be doers, multitaskers, constantly working, except for short periods when we are supposed to be constantly playing. Always moving from one thing to the next. And not living in this way, this lifestyle of constant motion and constant demands, is to risk being judged as lazy or flaky or just not made out to be in this world. However, those other things, appreciation, mindfulness, contemplation, intention, these keep us grounded in the midst of the motion and activity that swirls around us and helps to bring happiness by allowing us to see the wonder of the world, the wonder of other people, and the wonder that is ourselves. It breaks down the shell we create in our haste to get to all the bases every day. It peels away the facade we have constructed for ourselves and that others have built for us. We naturally spend more time doing just this kind of appreciation, during Advent and Christmas and Lent and Easter, because it somehow is a little more acceptable, a little bit more accessible during that time. But it is too bad that we struggle to take what we learn during those times and keep that spirit of appreciation going through the winter and into the spring. The message of the holidays is that things should never return to normal. All that stuff we put off until now needs to be kept in perspective as just stuff in the grand scheme of life. Our spiritual lives and discipline, our lives in this faith community are meant to remind us of this fact, to keep us connected as much to what is as to what will be. And these are the tools that we need as we resolve to make this time, this mundane, everyday, ordinary, perhaps, yes, even boring time, a little more special and a little more holy. Please join with us now in our final hymn, in number 72 in your red hymnal now, The Spacious Firmament on High.